Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm Dr. Raul Ruiz, and I represent 36th Congressional District here in California. We are joined today by Jarvis Crawford, um, Executive Pastor Resina Shepherd, Jan Pye, Dixie Miller, Wayman Furman, Troy Strange, Bishop uh, Kefion Shepherd, Jarvis Crawford, Pastor Rodney Croon, Senior Pastor Chezeron Carter, Debbie Franklin, and Master Sergeant Edward Brackens. Uh, I want to thank each of you for being here today to lead discussion on such an incredibly important issue that's very much weighing on all of our hearts and all of our minds. We come together today experiencing a mix of emotions, a mix of hurtful emotions. Sometimes there's anger, there's sadness, there's injustice, with fresh wounds causing pain and suffering. And we are hungry for faith, love, and hope. Hope in action and hope in change. Just over the last few weeks, we've watched the unprovoked shooting of Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, the harassment of Christian Cooper in New York City Central Park, and most recently, the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. And these just happen to be the incidents that were caught on camera. That's not to mention the names of Breonna Taylor, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Freddie Gray, Alton Sterling, and the list goes on. There have been generations of racial injustices that Black Americans have endured since our country's founding. I am heartbroken and outraged that so many forces are excusing, validating, and even encouraging these abhorrent behaviors still today. And I believe that silence is complicity. It is not good enough to merely oppose hate. I believe that people in positions of power must actively listen, learn, and advocate for change. But let me be clear when I say people in positions of power. And I want to tell those people in power, and I want them to know that power is derived from the people. And it is clear that as a nation, we are in desperate need of healing, of change, compassion, unity, and leadership. And that starts with listening. It starts with elevating Black voices, and it starts with standing in solidarity with the Black community as we say together, enough is enough. Before we begin this discussion, we're going to have an opening prayer by Bishop Kefion Shepherd. Bishop Shepherd, can you lead us in prayer?
Sure thing. Hearts and minds to the throne of grace. Father, we just thank you for this time. We thank you for this platform, God. As our nation is enduring civil unrest, God, we stand on the promise that you gave us. You said that you give us peace if our minds stayed on you. So God, while we stand on that peace and we rest in that peace, Lord, we pray that we're able to converse in a dialogue that will produce strategies. Lord, endow us with your wisdom on today so that we can reach the masses with this message that says that those that are justified shouldn't be able to stand for injustice. And so now, God, we speak to this panel. We ask that you soften the hearts and the minds of the people who may watch this video with a heart to heart. And God, we just speak peace because we are one nation and we should operate as such as. And so, God, we just glorify you. We honor you and we give you all the glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. So we're going to start with introductions, and I'll call your name, and then each one of you can introduce yourselves and your organization, your role, and your connection to the community here in the desert in District 36. As I mentioned in prior to getting on, the format will be that we'll do an introduction. Everybody will have a moment to introduce yourselves. And then afterwards, Jarvis Crawford and I will host, we'll bring up some questions, we'll foster this conversation. And the objective here is to elevate your voices, to elevate the voice of the Black community, the experiences, and have a conversation of where do we go from here. And so I really humbly thank all of you for your leadership role, for speaking up, for your courage, and for everything you've done throughout the years here in our community. So why don't I go ahead and start calling on folks, and everybody will have about a couple minutes to introduce yourselves, your full names, your roles, your organizations, and how long you've been around. And I'll start with my co-host for the evening, Jarvis Crawford.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you again, Congressman, for putting this on. I appreciate everyone that is on here. Everyone's voice is important. We wish we could have had more folks on here, but for the sake of time, I see, Congressman, we wanted to limit it to some folks. My name is Jarvis Crawford. I have a couple of hats that I wear within the community, within the state. I actually work with the California Parks and Rec Society, with District 11 here in Southern California. I'm a member of First Baptist Church, Palm Springs, where I'm a trustee, deacon. I work with the city of Palm Springs. I actually manage a community center at the James O. Jesse Desert Highland Unity Center. I'm the president of the Palm Springs Black History Committee here in the Coachella Valley, and put on events throughout the year. Hoping and praying that we'll be able to get these events going again. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a family man, and a community leader. I'm a community servant. Let me say it that way. Whatever the community calls, I do what I can when I can. Those are some of the basic things that I do. Like I say, I wear a lot of hats, but I want to hear from you all. I know there's some names on here I've never met before. So welcome to everyone, and thank you again.
Thank you, Jarvis. Next, I want to open it up to Executive Pastor Resina Shepherd.
Good morning, everyone. I am Resina Shepherd, and I am the Executive Pastor of Word of Life Fellowship Center here in Desert Hot Springs. I am the wife of Bishop Dr. Keithian Shepherd. We've been here in the community 16 years. I've been here, and we have been pastoring Word of Life for 8 years now. And we have our hands on, for the most part, our passion is the homeless community that we have here in Desert Hot Springs. So we are feeding community here, and we're touching wherever we can to aid in that area and those of the less fortunate. So I am the mother of 3, and we are here in this desert, and we are standing in partnership with everyone who is willing to stand hand in hand to work on what's happening, the injustices of not just Desert Hot Springs, but of our country.
Thank you very much. Jan Pai.
Thank you, Congressman Ruiz. I started on the council. I'm council member of Desert Hot Springs. I started on the council because I applied to be on the police commission. The city clerk put my name in to be a city council person, and that's how I started. I started in 1999 and have been on and off the council to now, from 99. Been elected 3 times by the council and elected in council meetings as well. I serve on several boards, and I'm not going to mention all of them, either advisory or on the board themselves, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much. Next, I want to introduce Wayman Furman.
Thank you, Congressman. I just want to start off by saying it's a pleasure to be invited to such a roundtable with these distinguished folks here, and it's an honor. Let me start by introducing myself. I am a council member in the city of Indio. My name is Wayman Furman. I'm also an 18-year veteran in the correctional system. I also am the founder of the Men of Vision Christian men's group in my institution. Also, I am the vice chairman of the Coachella Valley Association of Governments Public Safety Committee. And one of the biggest things that catapulted me into law enforcement were my negative interactions with law enforcement. And I figured the best way to counteract that was to become one. And I think I've been successful, but it takes more than one person. It takes more than one community. And we're seeing that now, that it's going to take our whole nation to stand in solidarity with us to fight these deep-rooted racial injustices that we have in our country. And sometimes it's not a comfortable situation or should I say a conversation, but it needs to be had. And I think this is great. And I just appreciate being invited. So thank you.
Thank you. Troy Strange.
Thank you, Congressman. I appreciate you putting this forum together and allowing me to participate. I'm Troy Strange. I was born and raised here in the city of Indio, and been here all my life except for about 13 years where I went away to school and I lived in Los Angeles, and I gained some skills and experience and wanted to bring it back to the Valley. I'm a former city councilman in the city of Indio. I've worked in various cities. City of Desert Hot Springs, I was there for 7 years in economic development, redevelopment. The city of Indio, I was there for 2.5 years, and I worked with many home builders in development in various projects throughout the Valley. I'm a descendant of John Nobles. John Nobles was one of the first Black settlers in Indio and the Valley, and he settled a community behind them all. It was a community that was there for several decades, in which as African Americans came into the city, into the area, that was a place they could settle. Because at that time, the city wouldn't allow many African Americans to settle in other places and have access to the water that was available through the city. So he settled the community and was able to lend a hand to those coming in and provide a community. And so I'm hopeful that we can reestablish some of those ideas and working to lift our voices and improve our conditions as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Troy. Next, we have the distinct pleasure and honor to having Jarvis Crawford. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Reza Crawford. I am the daughter of the amazing Jarvis Crawford. Currently, I am studying majoring in political science, minoring in criminal justice at the California Baptist University in Riverside. Prior to attending college, I served as the Associate Student Body President at Palm Springs High School, the President of the Black Student Union at Palm Springs High School. I also served as a student representative for the Palm Springs Human Rights Commission, as well as a student representative for the Palm Springs Unified School District. After obtaining my degree, I would like to go into law, serving as an attorney. Throughout this discussion, I want to take away what my elders, what their vision is for the future for us as African American and Black people. I would like to soak in all of the knowledge from you and see how I can implement these changes into children of my age, because we are the future and we want to be able to carry on and continue to be able to live peacefully and equally here in the United States. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I would like to introduce Bishop Kefion Shepherd.
Good morning, everyone. My wife has spoken. We are senior servants at Word of Life Fellowship Center in Desert Hot Springs. She mentioned our passion for, our burden for the homeless in that area, in that region. Father of three, Justin, Michaela, and Caleb. Michaela is the most notorious of the three because you see her everywhere. And and it's an honor to be with you all. Thank you, Congressman. I see a few of us that grew up here together. So to be here, coming from that perspective with some of the brilliant minds that we have surrounding us, it's an honor. And I'll say this from this conversation, this dialogue, I pray that we're able to show those that are watching in a passionate way how we feel and how this affects us, and to show them that if it affects one of us, it affects all of us. And I think that nationwide we've seen this is not just a Black issue. You see people from every race and every ethnicity standing in solidarity, saying enough is enough. So I'm praying that we can spark that change through this dialogue.
Thank you. Pastor James Baylor.
Congressman, bless your heart. Pastor Baylor, I'm new to the community, new to the area. I've been here maybe almost a year now. Pastor of First Community Baptist Church, with a lifetime member of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, also a member of the NAACP, 100 Black Men in an Empire. And again, it is a pleasure to be among the distinguished group of individuals who are participating in this open discussion.
Thank you very much, Pastor. Debbie Franklin.
Good morning, and I want to say first, thank you very much for convening this opportunity for us all to get together. I am a 35-year resident of the Banning area, and I am happily married with 2 girls and 2 grandchildren that I sorely miss since they live on Virginia. I have been in the city council for 12 years, being reelected to 3 terms, the mayor for 3 of them. And since I've left the city council in 2018, I've been active in the YES group, Youth Essential Skills, the Office of Aging for the County of Riverside, the NCNW, National Council of Negro Women, the Life member. And I'm active with the Key Club at the Banning High School with backpacks for the school children and Holiday Wish. So that pretty much sums up what I do most of the time.
Thank you very much. Very busy, Debbie. Next, I want to introduce Master Sergeant Edward Brackens.
Hello, and I guess I'm probably the least distinguished of the group. I spent 22.5 years on active duty. I retired. I've been teaching junior ROTC for the last 22 years. First 17 down at Hemet High School, and I've been up at Beaumont High School for the last going on 6 years. I am married. I have 3 children. I have 7 grandchildren. My oldest is 45. As far as my children, my youngest is 32. My involvement, Anita Worthen is the one who asked me to do this. So I have to thank her for this later on for being allowed to be in this distinguished group. But we do a lot of community service with the VFW and other local groups. The Veterans Expo is something we do every year to help out. But community service has been something I've been a part of for, like I said, for the last 20 some odd years after leaving the military. And I'm here to offer my voice for whatever. And I appreciate you inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Next, Senior Pastor Shezron Carter.
Yes, thank you for the invite. I'm so glad to be a part of this discussion. Again, my name is Pastor Shezron Carter, pastor of the Agilon Missionary Baptist Church here in Palm Springs, California. I've been in full-time ministry for the past 30 years. I've been here in Palm Springs since 2011, and I've been pastoring Agilon for the past 3 years. But I'm just glad to be here, Bible teacher and preacher, and proud to be it. So looking forward for this discussion.
Thank you very much. Next, Pastor Rodney Croon.
Yes, my name is, again, Pastor Rodney Croon, and I am a husband, 3 children. I've been pastoring First Baptist Church for the past 19 years, and I consider myself a servant leader of the community, you know, and an encourager. You know, a lot of members who serve in different areas of the city and different places like that. And so I'm always behind the scenes trying to encourage them and keep them encouraged as they fight the good fight. But I'm been, like I said, I'm proud to be a senior pastor. Glad to be a gospel preacher, and any way that I can help to try to further the conversation and try to make a difference, then I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to serve.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Just to let you know, Dixie Miller, the president of the Desert Highland Gateway community, is having some technical issues. We're working right now behind the scenes trying to get her logged in. So when she comes up, I'll introduce her, I'll orient her, and then we'll have her say a few words when she gets on. Okay. So Jarvis, my role here is going to be to listen intently, and to really help in fostering this conversation. As co-host, I'd love for you to kick us off in a conversation. If you want to get started, if you want to ask a question,
yes,
whichever you want to do.
Thank you, Congressman. So we all know why we're here. Congressman, in this introduction, spoke on the injustices of African Americans. We're not just going to say injustice from police brutality, but just injustice from society and the way that the system works. Over the past few decades, we'll just say it that way, since past the Civil Rights Movement, we have seen change in America, but it hasn't all been positive. We recently have witnessed a death of an African-American man to the knee, not to the hands, but to the knee of an officer. And so we're just going to start the conversation right there. Your thoughts, what we can do as a community. So first your thoughts, and then the second part of that question is what we as a community can do. And if you can do this, just raise your hand up or just begin to speak, and then I'll try to listen to see which person I heard to speak first, and then we'll give way for that person to speak.
Well, why don't we call on Wayman Furman? Why don't you go ahead and lead us off, Wayman?
Okay, I'll start off by just sending my condolences out to the Lloyd family and folks who have been victims of these injustices. I think what we're seeing here now, as our generations begin to pass, some of our generations have gotten, I don't want to say desensitized, but used to seeing some of these acts. And we have a new generation now who are seeing these things happen, not only on television, but social media, because they're being recorded. And I watched alongside of my 17-year-old son, traumatized. I watched Mr. Lloyd's life leave right in front of my eyes as he begged for his mother and told the officers he couldn't breathe. And not only as a Black man, but as a human being, that was traumatizing for me and my son. But as a law enforcement officer, while I watched this happening, I was begging and pleading for the other officers to intervene and pull their partner off of his neck, knowing the dangers of having someone down on the ground like that. And by the look in his eyes and his demeanor and being nonchalant about being on that, Mr. Lloyd, it troubled me. And I started to think maybe that's a cultural thing in that department. And I knew that if those officers weren't arrested, all four of them, our country was going to see something that we haven't seen ever or in a very long time. And I'll go ahead and pass it on now because I could keep going because it was so traumatizing. And things like this, we cannot forget or erase out of our minds. And also it takes us back to when we've had incidents like this or it's happened in our own communities. And as not only as an elected official, this gave me the motivation to stand up even more and speak out about it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Furman. You know what, Congressman, you got a better view. My phone only shows me a certain amount of people. So if you don't mind, Congressman, going ahead and reading off the next name.
Okay, I will. I will. And if I could just remind folks to mute to eliminate the background noise, and then and whoever is speaking, unmute yourself as well. But I just wanted to follow up with Wayman. Wayman, you said you watched it with your 17-year-old son. What was the conversation with your 17-year-old son like?
Well, my son is like most young adults or young people. They're on social media and they're engaging with their own friends, and they felt a lot of anger, fear, and I wanted to restore some hope and tranquility, not only with him and with the community, because right now, as we continue to grow, our community has a young, active, progressive young base. And they want answers. They want some hope. And that's why it was incumbent to me, not only as an elected official, but as a father and a Black man, to try to get in front of this and bring some tranquility to the conversation in these youngsters before they're still steered in the wrong direction. And he was traumatized when he watched that. And every day that since the incident, we've spoken and we've talked about it as events evolve in our country.
Great. We've been joined by Dixie Miller, president of Desert Highland Gateway Community. Thank you for joining us, Dixie. If you want to say a couple words of who you are, your full name, your role in the community, everybody had a chance to give a couple of minutes of remarks at the very beginning and an introduction. If you'd like to have a couple minutes now introducing yourself, please go ahead.
Dixie Miller, president of Desert Highland Gateway Action Association. I've been in the community for over 40 years. I've been in Palm Springs over 40 years, and I'm glad that the protest is taking place, but I would like them to be peaceful, because I'm on the police advisory board, and I see a lot of seeing what if they had body cameras, a lot of issues amongst the community and the police departments would be more, we would see the truth. And it wouldn't be he say, or the police have one side and the community have another side. It would be on camera, and it would be, you can't fight a picture. Just like that guy with his knee on the neck of that Floyd, Mr. Floyd. You can't fight that. All right, the whole world, and that's what I this post. Been a pledge with police and community getting into it, and the community being abused. So, and said, this is wrong, don't do this, or get punished for what they're doing. They may get punished, but they don't get punished the way they should be punished. They get fired, okay. They can go get another job and keep on living while someone else has died. So I just feel that the protesters are good, as long as they're peaceful. And I feel that they should go on until we put some things in place, not just in this instance where the police is in jail for third-degree murder, but I would love to see something rolled into law, protecting the community, the different minority communities. And I just have to say that if people would have listened to Colin Kaepernick years ago when he knelt down and was trying to fight for the cause of that's happening right now, we'll be in a better position. It may not even happen, really, because it would have been things would have been put in place had we followed his lead instead of a lot of us jumping and saying that he was wrong and doing this, but he was absolutely right.
Hey,
and
Dixie, I don't mean to cut you off. We've given each person 2 minutes.
Oh,
2 minutes.
I'm sorry. I
thank you.
on about this mess, but okay.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Good. Okay.
Congressman, if you want to go ahead and so just a reminder of the question that I had asked at the beginning, and Dixie, you kind of answered your already, but it's what can we do? What is it that we can do as a community? So I don't know who's next on the queue, Congressman.
Yeah, why don't we go with Reverend Carter? Reverend Carter.
All right. Yes, thank you. I definitely feel the same way in regards to, no one can look at the videotape and not feel something. I'm not to the point of boiling over anger and I'm angry, but I am totally hurt and bothered, even by it looked like the officer knew that he had impunity, so he can do what he wanted to do, even though he was being filmed. He didn't even care, and neither did his partner care about being filmed, because they had the attitude of being for free from being judged by this, and so that greatly bothered me and burdened me. And so for the conversation that I have, is that yes, laws needs to be changed, and for the regulations need to be in place, but that doesn't change the person. You can change all the environment, change the laws, change the regulations, but the people, hearts are still the same. And so as a church, for as we address the real issue, and the issue is the issue of the heart. And we pray, we must pray and we do pray for our people, for our Black men, for our young Black men, and we pray for those who are commissioned to protect for us, that the Lord would change their hearts too and fix them, because you can have cameras on them and they still going to do whatever they want to do. So if they're not changed on the inside, you can put for a restraining order don't stop a person from come getting you if they don't like you. So the person has to be changed, and the church is called to address the real issue, the issue of the heart. And yes, we do need those changes. And I suggest, even from a, from a practical sense, because everybody wants something done, but there's nothing really clarified about what that is. Everybody want to be heard. Of course, there's injustice, yes, but what practically can we do? And and I would say,
Carter, Carter, I
appreciate you.
Hey, yeah, Dixie is the same thing Dixie said. We can keep going. Yeah, we want to give everyone else a chance to speak. So, Congressman, if you could please move on to the next person. Thank you, Reverend Carter.
We'll come back, Reverend Carter, because I think you were right about to speak to some very important ideas, because we want to give hope, and we want that hope in action, and we want that hope in change. Hope without action is simply hope, right? And so we want to realize that hope. We want to live that hope. So we'll come back to that conversation. Debbie Franklin, your thoughts and what's going on and words you'd like to share right now?
Well, I've spoken to people across the nation. I just spoke to Brooklyn this morning, my cousin, and I've talked to my son-in-law in Virginia, and I know there's a lot of not disappointment, because it goes past that point. And we've talked about what can we do. I would say that the first thing that comes to mind is vote. People need to get out and vote. People need to be educated, mobilized, but everybody who is qualified should be out there at the ballot boxes, because it's not just our local representatives, but it's across the nation. And I can't tell you enough of how people have said, people my age have said they would be out there protesting. But the main thing we've all talked about is that everybody who is able has got to vote.
So what are you experiencing right now, Debbie, in the community there at the San Gorgonio Pass, your friends, your family? How is this affecting the community in general?
Well, in the local community, it really hasn't affected most people because, you know, we're a senior community and a lot of people are not able to get out and protest. But I've spoken to several people who have said if they were younger, they would be out there protesting. And they are very dismayed that people are not the destruction as much as knowing that this is still going on. They know it goes on. They've seen it. You know, I've had a gentleman ask me, is there still racism in the United States? And I have to tell him I encounter it every day. But the main thing people are saying, they want to get on the rolls to get out, and I'm sure you'll call us, but they want to pick up the phone, encourage everybody they know to have an informed vote come November. And then we need to keep it up. You know, with the National Council of Nigger Women, we need to have a full army of people who are able to talk to other people, to educate them, because it's not just to vote, but to know who you're voting for.
Thank you, Mrs. Franklin. That was your 2 minutes remarks. Congressman, if you want to go ahead and choose the next speaker.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask Reverend Croon. Reverend Croon, can you say a few words, please?
Yes. I felt the same frustration everyone else felt. And I have to say, I was kind of angry. I had to really pray and just kind of deal with my own heart before I could even deal with anybody else, you know. But I will say this, that I just think that we know that police brutality is nothing new. It's people have been crying about it. That's what, you know, many groups that were formed, even the Black Panthers back in the day, they were formed just to police their own communities. So police brutality is nothing new. But I think I agree with Debbie. We need to be able to vote, not just vote for the presidency, but also vote during the midterms. You know, we a lot of us are absent during the midterm elections. We need to be able to vote down ballot, you know, down ballot as well. And so I think that's the only way we're going to be able to impact change. And so I try to encourage my congregation and community, vote, you know what I'm saying, vote. And, you know, I try to use the platform that I have to try to encourage people to vote. Now, I can't tell you who to vote for because we're a nonprofit, but I can tell you that we need to vote. And so those are the things that I try to do to impact the community as far as that's concerned. But I felt the same frustration. But America's throwing up. You know, a lot of those hidden sins are now being thrown up.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the manifestation of it.
You know, people, Debbie and you have mentioned voting, and there's different layers of voting. Of course, there's the national federal policies set by Congress, and there's the state, and then there's a local. In terms of police departments or law enforcement, those decisions are at the local city council, city mayors, if they have their own police departments, or it's voting in the sheriff elections for a countywide. So just want to stress that change happens at the ground as well as at the state and federal level. So it's also important to just understand that city council mayors have enormous roles in setting policy for their local Palm Desert departments. They hire their police chiefs, And of course, the elected law enforcement officer here is a sheriff of the county. So those elections are very important. But the other thing I wanted to say is you mentioned that before you went out to counsel others, you had to check your own heart and you had to check your own anger. How did you do that?
Oh man, I just had to focus not on individuals, focus not on the person as much as what caused it, so what's causing it, because sometimes it's easy to blame a person and say, hey, you know what, I want to go out and I want to do something to all white people, that wouldn't be right, because but you have to focus on the real issue, the underlying issue. And so that's what I had to do. The underlying issue is there's a systemic racism that runs through the vein of America. And so we had to, that's where I had to focus instead of focusing on an individual or individuals. And so I had to check my heart and make sure that I'm focused on the right thing and not, against certain people or whatever, so.
Thank you. Pastor Baylor, would you like?
Yes, I think I like what Pastor Carter alluded to. You can pass all kind of laws and legislate extensively and meticulously, but at the same time, you cannot regulate a person's heart. And I think what's happening is you have a lot of hatred in individuals who are supposed to be protecting and serving us. So one of the things that should be considered, and it may already be in place, but I don't know to what extent, is someone needs to police the police. Obviously, this gentleman who took the life of George Floyd had a serious problem. And if something would have been done, maybe the first or even the second or maybe even the third incident, maybe this could have been prevented. And so I think there should be something put in place that allows the community to police the police. And every time there's an incident that comes up that is questionable, that person needs to be brought before the committee and explain exactly what happened and why did you take this course of action with this particular case. And then the other thing to consider is also, and I don't know to what extent, is the initial process of bringing individuals into the police force to take a look at their psyche, to take a look at their psychological way of thinking and how they believe and get a better idea of how they were raised. Because a lot of times you have individuals coming into the force and they got issues. They have psychological problems. So now you got a loose cannon out there on the streets that's not being policed. And so these are the kind of things that come to mind. And again, going back to what Pastor Carter alluded to, is you can regulate all day long, but you can legislate all day long, but you cannot regulate a person's heart.
Reverend Carter, that was your 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Just FYI, that buzzing, that ringing, I think is Jarvis's timer.
That's correct.
So,
yeah.
So that Jarvis is not by accident. I think he's just put a timer up just to kind of give people an idea of the timing we have, and I'll do some follow-up questions and stuff that we have. I'm going to ask Master Sergeant Edward Brackens to speak, and then next I'm going to go to Jarvray. Master Sergeant Brackens.
Okay, well, I'm trying to stay with my 2 minutes. Everything everybody said is perfect, and I agree with it. I also had to do a little self-healing before I talk to other people. I got a lot of students that I've had over the last 20 some odd years, and I hear their conversations on social media. And it's disturbing at times because what we don't have enough, there's a lot of places we can start. We can start with the education. We don't do enough in education to kind of get people to understand the conflicts that have gone on historically. We've missed a lot of things. We just had an anniversary, a terrible anniversary of 100 years ago, where a whole community, because they happen to be African American, were destroyed simply because of that. They call it a race riot, but it's not. When it's only one side, it's not a race riot. The other things, back to what they said about legislation and stuff, and those things are important. And hard, it's going to be tough because that's something that hasn't happened in all this time. I don't know if it's ever going to change. Training is one thing. I hear that there's a gentleman who goes out and teaches people how to kill without any regret. And if you train people to do that and go out there, you're going to have what you just got over and over and over again. Someone has to talk about what the training is and what kind of training goes into it. Yes, people walk into a job like that. If they're not ready for it, same thing in the military. Why are you going into the military? You're going into the purpose to kill versus protect and serve. There's a different process to go through. We've got to somehow find out what the training is prior to someone coming in. There's a lot of things, and I'm trying to keep myself under the 2 minutes, but yes,
so
we got to find a way.
The training.
What's that?
Transparency in the training as well.
Transparency. Expectation should not be that you can kill without any regret, because what happens to your conscience after a while? If you got that ability to absorb that much maim and killing people and not have it affect you, there's a real concern for your psychological makeup.
Yeah.
But we gotta find a way to get through this process, and I defer to the people who want to do it from a religious standpoint. I love that. I grew up in the Pentecostal church, and that's my cue. All right.
Thank you so much, Jarvis.
So after listening to everyone's statements on this, I would just like to say, on behalf of the young adult community, I think the reason why we are really stepping up is because I personally feel like after the civil rights movement, us as Black people just got stagnant, and we just started accepting the systematic racism when that is not okay. I know many times growing up, my mom and my dad just told me that that's just how it is, and that's just how it's always been, and we're tired of that, and we won't accept that. And we're now seeing that it's not just African Americans who are witnessing it. And personally, I think that education is the first step. I have many people who, in the beginning of this week, they didn't even understand what we were fighting for, and they didn't understand that it was deeper than George Floyd. It was deeper than Breonna Taylor, deeper than Sandra Bland. The list goes on. And I think that although it would be a good idea to try to, get into the police system and find transparency, I feel like that is something that is going to have to happen down the line, and we need change now. And personally, I feel like that starts with how much we push on police complaints. I feel like that's something that we're granted as citizens to complain about police, but nothing happens. And so I feel like the first step that we can take is push on consequences need to happen after a police maybe has 2 or 3 complaints, or he or she needs to get another evaluation based on the complaints that are made in regards to, race. And I just feel as though we have to just be more proactive. And I think that the protest, although many people aren't a fan of the violence, I feel as though in our generation, that's how we feel like we can be heard. Because as everyone said, Martin Luther King was a peaceful protester and they still shot him. So I feel as though we have to be open-minded, although we don't want violence, although we don't want to tear down the very country that we built. We have to take any avenue that we can to allow people to see that this is something that we have to talk about.
Hey Jarvis, maybe there's like a Bing.
Yeah,
like
I'm trying to find one that's a little simpler.
Yeah, maybe a little gentle Bing or something.
All right. Okay. Too intrusive, huh? Okay.
Jarvis, you can Jarvis, you can take it up with your dad afterwards.
I will.
Next, I'm going to ask Troy Strange, and after Troy, I'm going to ask Jen Pai to speak. Troy?
Well, thank you. And listening to all the comments and responding to the first question of how I felt. When I saw, and I didn't watch the video, I saw the still picture and that was enough. I didn't want to internalize the trauma because as Black people, we have generations of trauma that we carry with us. And I believe that that trauma creates some of the fear and some of the anxiety that we have in our communities. So I decided I didn't want to take that on, and I chose not to see the video in its entirety. But I did see what was going on this weekend, and it really disturbed me. So I had to step back and regather myself so that I can focus on solutions. So for me, it's commitment to the solutions, because we all know the problems. The problems haven't changed, and they continue from hundreds of years ago. So for me, I think there needs to be a framework in how we deal with those solutions, because it's a systematic process, systematic racism that causes a lot of these issues. For example, dealing with the system of how we're educated or miseducated is important. Also, housing policies, gentrification. Many of our communities that once been there for many years are being disrupted. And so many of our people are being dispersed throughout various communities and don't have that network. And as you know, with voting, typically the only position that we vote on that's not based on geography in this country is the presidency. Everything else we vote on is based on where we live. And so we have to build strong communities so that we can lift our voices. Without that, we have no political power or economic power. Also, we have to deal with that system of police brutality, the law enforcement, as well as access to capital. We've been redlined, loans that we get are predatory. Those type of things are important to really begin to address the issues that we have. And lastly, the criminal justice system, mass incarceration. These are the 5 kind of parameters, and there's more, but these are the 5 parameters that I believe that we can kind of hone in on and focus in on as we deal with voting. And we talk to the elected officials or those who are running for office and say, how do you address these systems? How do you address these issues in our community? And these are the things that we're striving to improve and to overcome so that we can have a better way of life and conditions in our community.
Thank you, Troy. Jan?
Mr. Furman, you stated that, I think you said 96% of the police officers are good police officers. When we saw that video, it was a bad thing, but I've seen in person the videos, and that's what the young people don't understand. We've seen it live. Now, with respect to what you can change and can't change, my thing is, if somebody comes to me wrong, that's an opportunity to educate. And I know that God is inside of everybody. And sometimes I can't talk to them. I have to talk to the God in them. Now, so far as how I got on here, it was because I came from LA. And I thought somebody should be on the council, on the police commission that looked like me. Well, God said I'm supposed to be on the council. And one of the things, there are more things than just police stuff. We have healthcare, we have a bunch of stuff. And what I think we ought to do is go back to the Pledge of Allegiance and where it says liberty and justice for all. I'm done.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Jan.
Congressman, I'd like to follow up with her because it's really important what she said. Yes. And the reason why I use that metaphor of 99.9%, because that 1% that go rogue, we can't afford that. There are professions that we can have that 1%. And for instance, if you're a doctor, that 1% could be vital. If you are a law enforcement officer that goes rogue, that 1% could cost someone their life and add to that those issues. So the reason why I bring that up is because right now we need the other 99.9% to step up and speak out, not only against it, but prevent it with also training and also policing themselves. It was spoken earlier that you can't change someone's heart, but when you are in any group or congregation, you know who your people are. And it's up to those officers to also stand up. I've had many of my colleagues, many folks from our community of all races reach out to me because they heard me. And one of the things I always tell folks is I belong to a lot of circles. And I say, what if that was my face you seen under that car and my neck was being kneeled on and I died? Would you speak up? And that made them think. And that's why it's important that all folks need to stand up, because our youngsters are seeing this. And like Ms. Crawford said earlier, they're not having it. And now in our generations, we're all kind of connected now, you know, whether it's through marriage, if it's through children, if it's through our churches, we're all kind of connected, especially in the Coachella Valley. So we are connected, and we have to stand together in solidarity to combat these injustices.
Thank you, Wayman. I want to ask Bishop Shepard and then Executive Pastor Shepard as well to speak. Mr. Shepard, you want to go next? Oh, he's being interviewed probably.
I'm here. I was looking for the mute button, so I apologize. They just left.
I think you need to push your video button too.
Oh yeah, there we go. They just left from over here, so okay, I'm back. Okay, there we go. Yeah, okay. I was angry initially when I saw it, and I had to remember the scripture in Ephesians 4 where it says anger gives a foothold, it gives room to the devil. And in order to keep the enemy from doing what he wanted to do through me, I had to turn off the television. Like many others, I have not watched the complete video. I do believe that one thing we can do to help change is we have to start holding the media accountable in a sense, because that imaging can cause PTSD and just triggering. In this valley, I was born and raised in this valley, and I've had several unfortunate incidents with law enforcement, not having committed a crime, just having to be perceived as a threat. And when I see that imaging, that triggers some things inside of me. And we have a 10-year-old daughter at home who doesn't understand. And so to her, if we start to explain those things to her, in her mind, it's, I can't jog, I can't be resting at home, I can't, I can't be charged with a misdemeanor. Any interaction I have with the police ends up in death. And so we have to shield her from that. But what I will say is there's two things that we can do to kind of, kind of stop this madness. The first thing I would say is don't let them shift the narrative. They're moving the goalpost in the media now. Suddenly the looting has taken stage, and I see more people upset and frustrated with the looting than I do about the fact that just 9 days ago, the world watched a man lynched on national TV with 3 officers on his back, and then two on his back, 1 on his neck, and 1 watching standby. We can't let them forget that the reason why, and the looting is unfortunate, the violence is, I'm not for it. That's not a part of my core values, but we have to understand that's a reaction. Let's go back to the action and treat that action. And then secondly, the thing that we need to do, we need to protest. And protest is not just going outside with signs of marching down the street. The word protest means it's an action expressing disapproval. So we're showing that we disapprove of these actions. How do we do that? We hit the streets. We protest with signs. We do, but also we alluded to voting. And I love how everyone has said, go all the way down to your municipal and city elections and put these people out of office who don't bring change about in your community to make sure that this stuff doesn't happen where you are.
Reverend Shepard, okay, that was your 2 minutes.
I heard it, man. I backed off.
Resina.
Well, in agreement with all of the comments that have already been spoken, it is heartbreaking for me to have seen what I saw on that video. I wish that I did not watch the video in its totality, but I did. And in seeing that, it blew my mind. And I don't know if I should have had my mind blown at that time or not, but it did. It blew my mind that an officer could do that, but that other officers would stand by and allow that to take place.
Right.
I have been with my husband during one of the incidents where we were profiled. And for me as a Black woman is not the same as him as a Black man. And it was disturbing for me.
Can you talk more about that if you may?
Sure. We were in Indian Wells. We had just went to dinner at, where was it, hon?
Esmeralda.
Esmeralda at the Renaissance Hotel. And we were coming back, we were on our way home, and we had pulled off onto Highway 111, and we were just driving at even probably a little bit below the speed limit. And an officer pulled behind us and pulled us over. For what reason, we have no idea still, other than the fact that maybe, this was years and years ago, that maybe our car looked like it didn't belong in the Indian Wells neighborhood. Maybe, we don't know why he pulled us over, but he pulled us over. He asked my husband a ton of questions as to what we were doing out at that time in that neighborhood. And so right then and there, I had to put my hand on my husband's hand, just because I knew he was upset. And it broke my heart for him that he would be pulled over as a Black man and us as a Black couple, because we looked like maybe we didn't belong in that particular neighborhood. He did not give us a ticket. There was nothing to give us a ticket for. He couldn't answer the questions as to why he really pulled us over, other than the fact that to him, we looked like we didn't belong. So that was the incident that I was there for. And I'm gonna go back really quick before my time is up. The things that I think that we need to do is some of the things that they already said. Vote from the local level all the way up to the presidency. Get out and vote, encourage other people to do the same. Yes. However, right in the midst of the police department, something needs to be done there. The psychological evaluations, I don't know how often they happen, but maybe they should happen every 6 months, because we have no idea how this is building up and building up and building up, and where these people come from. Do they have a psychological evaluation once before they get on the force, and then another one in 3 years? How often is that done? Ms. Jarvis said that she believes that they should actually be held accountable, and they should actually have someone saying, hey, once something happens once or twice, now we need to come back and do another training, another evaluation. It needs to go on. It cannot be swept under the rug by the police department. It cannot be excused. They cannot just get a pat on the hand and say, okay, you're on 3-month leave, and then you come back, or you're on paid leave. He murdered that man. That police officer murdered him. And
hey, my timer didn't go off this time, but I gave you a little more time.
I didn't hear, so I kept going.
No, you're good. You're good.
All right, thank you, but that's it.
Congressman, if I can interrupt, I think has everyone had a chance to speak?
Yes.
Okay, and I've took basic notes. I'm sorry, I was trying to multitask, but yeah, we've heard from each person here on what do we, and the question was, what can we do, and how do we go about this, and and we've got different answers from making complaints. Sometimes we don't do that as a Black community. We have this thing that says, oh, we don't snitch. Well, it's not snitching, it's telling. We need to get rid of saying that we don't tell. We need to tell. We need to make these complaints. And it was also stated that we need to make sure that there is someone policing the police. That's a great thing that needs to be done. Voting was number one. Many folks stated, voting needs to be done. A lot of folks stated that they also need to look at their self before they even reacted. Some people went out and just reacted. Hence the reason why we got the riots that are going on now. But I mean, that was what was built in them. We also talked about folks that, were dealing with this situation with their own children, with their sons and daughters and walking through this. I also got some comments that stated that, let me see where I'm at here. Some type of law in place, I think that was Dixie, some type of law in place towards police and minorities. We need to put something in law that states that, hey, if you've done something towards a minority, then guess what? We know it's going to be a harsher law, just like they did back in the 60s and 70s when it came to finding a way to lock our people back up. So they said, hey, you know what? Let's put a high time limit on marijuana or heroin, but put a little time on cocaine, unless if it's mixed with a different base to make it crack cocaine, and then make it higher for crack cocaine than cocaine because African Americans are using these drugs. So how about for the police, something like that be put back in place? So that was a good statement as far as putting something in place for the police towards minorities. I know Councilwoman Jen Pye stated, We need to lead. We need to listen to what our nation's Pledge of Allegiance says. Some of those things that we sing before games, and it needs to be adhered by all races and not just to say for Americans, but for all Americans. This needs to be fair across the board. So those were some of the notes that I took from this. I know we have, some of us have other things that we're doing, but for the sake of time, Congressman, if you want to go through this again and with another list of questions, with another question and answer with everyone here, we give everyone 2 more minutes, we can do this in about 30, 45 more minutes.
Yeah, I think we'll start to close. It'll be less than 30 minutes, just out of respect of people's time. I think we have about 15, 20 minutes, and I'll open it up to a question. I'll call on some folks. The question I have, we talked about some concrete ideas, some real concrete policy ideas. And I want you all to know that these conversations are happening in Congress right now, in terms of legislation that we can introduce in the House of Representatives in the federal level that will help direct this issue as a solution throughout our country. However, I've always said that we should never wait for Congress to act, and we should never wait for an act of Congress. That, solutions also begin in our own communities, in our own cities, in our own counties, and in our states as well. So I think that what we're seeing is a lot of empowerment happening. And the question, is how do we move that empowerment into local positive action? Troy, you mentioned, you didn't want to internalize the PTSD, the anxiety, the stress of watching a Black man with a knee on his neck crying out that he can't breathe, and then his last words was, "Mama, I'm through." I think that internalization is something that is misunderstood by a lot of people who haven't experienced that or don't identify with people who experience that kind of violence. And so how do we go from internalizing despair to externalizing hope with constructive action? How do we do that? And I want to ask Reverend Baylark, how do we, and I'm going to ask several of you, including you, Jarvis, how do we move from internalizing despair to externalizing hope and action? Reverend Baylark.
I think one of the things is you start by meeting with the law enforcement, sitting down and talking with them and sharing your concerns and your thoughts, and to come up with viable solutions to problems. And I think one of the things that should be considered is the recruiting process, how individuals are recruited into the police force, and to examine that thoroughly, and if necessary, re-examine it, because obviously it's not working. Coming from South Central LA, I was raised in LA, and I know how the LAPD operate. They operate off of codes. I don't want to get into that, but I think the most important thing is to meet with law enforcement and share our concerns, and to try to work with them in terms of resolving some of the issues and concerns. And again, I can't stress this enough, Congressman, the policing policy, whether the policing policy is done by the city council or the mayor or the community, but these officers need to be policed on a monthly basis. Think about it. If that individual who took the life of that man had been addressed on the third incident, we probably wouldn't even be having this conversation, because they would have found out that he is not fit to be a police officer. He needs to find another line of work.
Thank you.
So I think if we work with the law enforcement and see where the problem is and work together and sort of resolving the problem and having the community have a more active role, I would like to be actively involved in regards to this incident that took place 2 weeks ago, as an example.
Okay.
That way I know, and then I can share with others, hey, this person, this police officer was out of order, violated policy.
Thank you. You know, Jan was speaking to how she got involved. She took it upon herself to get involved in the commission, and then she's in city council. She's actively searched those ways. Jan, any advice you can give to move from internalizing despair to externalizing hope and action in the ways that you did for others?
One way is to become educated. And when you go to be educated, hear the person you're talking about. There's some people that don't know how our police office, say Desert Hot Springs, is governed. Visit the police. We have a police commission. I've been the only one on the police commission. Where are the rest of you? And not right now, but you can do ride-alongs with police. We had a person that did wrong. He got fired the next day. It wasn't 2 or 3 times. Find out, get educated. I'm done.
Thank you, Jan. Jarvis, you know, being in college and having friends that are out there protesting and doing, you know, and in my mind, the Lord's work in bringing about change. What do you say to your peers to move from internalizing despair to externalizing hope and action?
So honestly, I would say for us, it's coming together. I think when we're looking at a plan here in the Coachella Valley, I know that there are numerous different African American committees, but I feel like right now we need to come together. Rather than being different subdivisions, there's power in numbers. And I feel moving on from just after this conversation, we need to come together and organize a group. Listen to everyone's ideas. You know, the way that we're treated here in Desert Hot Springs is different than in India, different than in Indian Wells, different than in Cathedral City. So looking at what is the next step from here, this meeting today, I think that we need to come together. We need to compose a meeting and basically just put a few bullet points that we want to see. And then we go to the police chiefs. We go and talk to our mayors and let them know this is the change that we want to see. You let us know how we start. You let us know what we need to do. Because I think many times, you know, people, politicians and our mayors and our police chiefs, it's too much work for them. And they want to do the job that they're paid for and nothing more than that, which is okay. But let us know what we as a community, we as young people, older people, what can we do to get this show on the road? Because like you said, I don't want to wait for Congress. I don't want to wait for anyone. I want to start the moment we can. So speaking of what we can do right now, it would be to come together and devise a plan.
Thank you. I think coming together, you're speaking about all communities, correct?
Yes.
And I think
so
that's
in terms of,
yep.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So in terms of just, I'm now focusing just on the Coachella Valley. You know, we do have the Black History Committee as well as the Negro Women's Committee that she mentioned in Beaumont or banning. And so I'm just thinking about here kind of close to where we are. Let's start there. You know, get us together here in the Valley and then work our way up into different communities.
You have an organizer's heart. You have an organizer's heart. I want to ask Dixie, I know you have grandchildren and they live in the neighborhood there in North Palm Springs. And we talked a little yesterday about what you talk about at home. So if you were to speak to grandchildren throughout the the community, what would you say to help them move from internalizing despair to externalizing hope and action? And don't forget to unmute your phone.
I would say get educated, go to school, and make a difference. Get to know the police department, the police that come out there and cause havoc. Get to know them. And I would tell them to not get caught up in what they saw with Mr. Floyd. Because really, you can get mad as you want to get, but it's really nothing you can do legally unless you have your voice heard in the face of the right people. That means go to the police department, go to council meetings, go to whatever you have to do to be educated on what's really going on. What is really going on here? Because we know we have seen this all the time. We hear about Black people getting shot. We hear about them getting killed in some shape, form, or fashion with the police. And so I just tell them to mainly get educated and stay out of the way of the police.
Thank you.
And one of the things I stress on really hard is because in the community that I live in, we need the police officers with body cameras. Because we complain, we have a meeting every month. We complain every month about the police department. And they come, the police department is there every month, and we see little change. The same matter of fact, the same police officers that we complain about, they'd be right back out there the next day. And I don't think that should happen. So I just tell them to not be angry, because anger makes you do things you don't want to do. And it's easy to do something and regret it and get in trouble and things like that. That's what I tell my grandkids.
Pastor Shepard, how do we move from internalizing despair to externalizing hope and action with change?
Obviously, being a member of clergy, my hope is built on Jesus, and so we continue to saturate this nation and this community in prayer. From a practical standpoint, it's already been alluded to. For our community, and I do advise you to get involved with your community, because Minnesota is not our community. Desert Hot Springs, we're having a community police forum on Tuesday, where our chief and a couple of the officers will be there. It's open to the public, and we'll be discussing, amongst other things, one, what can we do to safeguard our region from having that kind of problem happen that happened in Minnesota. We're a firm believer in getting to know our officers and vice versa. Two, de-escalation techniques. Why does it seem like lethal force happens to be the first and only option that a lot of these officers go to? Three, the blue wall. When the police come to these forums, they always tell us, help us out. If you see something, say something. Well, we depend on the police to have the same thing. When you see something, say something. That blue wall culture says I have to cover my brother's six, and we understand that, but that's a life or death situation. Your brother's six should not mean you're going to overlook some things that are illegal or unfair or unjust. And then finally, my wife alluded to it as well as others, ongoing psych evaluation. I served as a chaplain for the Desert Hot Springs Police. I did ride-alongs, and a lot of times when you're riding along, officers will speak. They'll talk to you. They'll kind of let you know how their day went. They go through traumatizing experiences all day, every day. And I can only imagine without a psych eval or without psychiatric care, periodically how that stuff just builds and mounts. And so we want to push in a reform to say, no, these officers need to go through some type of psych evaluation, at least annually, because there's things that they encounter. And I'll close with this. I'll never forget one officer kind of explain what it felt like to see a dead body of a child laying in the middle of the street. And to imagine, carrying that for the rest of your career without having a release, without seeking help. They're not going to seek help by themselves. It may need to be mandated. So those three things, but we're going to start with our local police community forum on Tuesday. We're going to build from there.
Pastor Shepard, those are some very wise words. We actually had held roundtables with local police departments and the sheriff's office and the representatives and leadership precisely about mental health within the force. it's been documented through studies that law enforcement agents suffer PTSD. Many of them do. It's also documented that they oftentimes don't get the care that they need for many different reasons. It's also documented that law enforcement first responders have 3 times higher suicide rate than the general public. And I believe that your heart of gold is to address this through compassion for them to heal themselves as a method of ensuring that they're whole themselves as people, and so that also helps the interaction with community members. And I think that that's an important piece of this puzzle. And we'll definitely take that back as well. Hey, Troy, you were the one who initiated the internalization of this of trauma, and then you gave a good list of concrete next steps. You know, and I know you and Jarvis, and I'm going to ask Jarvis next. You work a lot with the youth, and you've spoken with a lot of the youth that are in our community. So what do you say? How do you counsel our youth, our community members, and move them from internalizing that anger, internalizing despair, to externalizing hope in action for change?
Well, first I would say, let's reimagine our communities. Because one thing I've noticed when our communities have been gentrified, that same community 5, 7, 8 years later, it looks different because someone came in with a different vision. And so we have to not only see what is there in reality, but imagine it in the way that we want it to be. And then we have to take the time to reinvest in that community, whether it be our time, whether it be dollars and resources, and then we have to work to revitalize. I think our youth and ourselves, we have to identify what is our purpose. I believe that we all came to this time and place for a reason. There's no accident that we're here at this point in time. And I think we need to identify, why am I here? And what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? And as we identify that, then I think we need to take those skills, those experiences, and utilize them to address the issues that we're facing right now. I think one of the things for the Valley, we need to look at, what skill sets do we have here locally that we can take an inventory of and identify how do we put these individuals into groups, teams, to begin to focus on some of the things I mentioned earlier, as far as police brutality, mass incarceration in the criminal justice system, gentrification, miseducation, access to wealth and capital, those type of things, to where we can begin to build a base, an economic and political base for the African-American community. Until the African-American community can be able to take power in those areas, we'll forever be reaching out, looking and hoping for things to happen. We have to do that for ourselves, and then we get others to help us. But first we have to identify, what is it that we want? You know, the problems are one thing, and we want to get rid of those. But when those things are done, what is it that we want in our community? How do we want to live? What do we want for our children? What does that look like? So we have to create that vision, that idea, and then we move forward. But first, identify the skills and what we have available, and begin to work from there.
Thank you, Troy. Jarvis, you know, you've been active. You've been, counselor. I seek your advice often because you're always involved and you do a lot of good work with youth. So how do you speak to this issue with the youth that you work with at the Highland Center and the Unity Center, and how do you move from internalizing despair to externalizing hope in action with change?
Yeah. Someone please put a 2-minute timer on me, okay? Over the past couple of months, it's been hard to reach out to the youth because we haven't been open. Our community center hasn't been open. So it's kind of hard to see where they're at, to even reach out to them. Luckily, my staff, because we've been closed, we have been reaching out to the youth and just seeing how they're doing with their schoolwork. And, if they need any assistance from us, what we can do. But it's been hard because of the COVID-19 to really reach out to them right now. I personally, this past week, the last 3-4 days that I've been here, I'll go out to the community. I'll reach out to some of the folks in the neighborhood and tell them, hey, man, when you see your kids, when you talk to the youngsters, you know, let them know this, let them know that. I gave a strong word to the community, to some of the youth in the community, telling them, hey, you know, I know you guys are seeing what's going on in these big cities. And, you know, that's it. A protest needs to be done. I said, but when the protest turns to a riot, that's when you're putting yourself in danger. And so I encourage them, you know, hey, let's not go out to these protests at night if you think that your mentality isn't well, because you'll probably be there for a peaceful protest and then something sparks you. So that was one of the things as far as what's happening recently. I wish I had more contact with our youth. I wish our community center was open, but like I said, because of COVID-19, I can't. But to piggyback off of what Mr. Strange was saying, you know, there needs to be things put in place to where we're educating our youth. It was even stated that, you know, in the beginning, Mr. Strange said, you know, there's been a lot of miseducation to our community, and it hasn't been, we need to be the ones educating our community ourselves and not letting someone outside of our community educate us, and let our youth know programs and activities need to continue even though we're dealing with this COVID-19 crisis. And especially right now, we need to find a way. So reaching out to the youth, like my daughter Jarvis, you know, we need to find a way to reach out to the youth now to give them some insight, to be the one to say something. Dixie said it plain, you know, I was able to reach out to my grandchildren directly. So we need to find a way to reach out to our youth and to share with them what's going on. But it's been hard over these past couple of months to get out, to get the word to them. So the best way I can say I've been doing it is telling a family member or some of the folks in the community to spread the word.
Thank you, Pastor Resina Shepherd.
Congressman, can I make one quick comment?
Sure.
And all of those things, they are critical. But one of the things I find is that you have in local organizations, small organizations, you have very few people trying to do a lot of work. I think if there is some planning grants and funds so that you can provide administration to where these things can be taken care of, because not only are people running some of these small organizations, they're working full-time jobs and they have families. So those resources will be important to help provide the administration for those efforts.
Thank you. I just wrote that down.
I just want to say thank you, because this is actually helping me a lot right now. And Ms. Jarvis, I commend you and I thank you for all that you have said and shared with us. We have a 10-year-old, and so where she is at 10 years old and where Jarvis and her peers are, totally different thing. So to have these forces come together, of all the cities come together, is an excellent idea. I do believe that as individuals, we want to think before we speak. I think that's very important, and especially to mind our surroundings. We have huge voices, especially with social media. And when we put our voices out there in social media, we have to be very careful, and we have to think before we speak. We have to pray before we speak, because a lot of our voices carry. And so if we put something out there, as Jarvis just mentioned, to spread the word. If we're going to spread the word, let's spread the word with love. Let's spread the word with education, so that people out there, we know that there are always going to be people who are going to act before they speak, but we want to be the change that inspires the hope. And so if we speak with love, if we speak with intent, then therefore we can draw people into the light instead of the darkness, because we're responsible as individuals, as human beings. We're responsible for one another. So let's be responsible and do the responsible thing. I'm grateful for our community forum for the police. But what you mentioned, Congressman, that you had the sheriffs involved as well. And I hope that we will get there, because it's important, because a lot of Desert Hot Springs is not policed by Desert Hot Springs Police. So the sheriffs are involved in a lot of different areas. So I think that's important as well. But speak hope. That's a great thing to do, is speak hope. It has been like this for a long time, but with young people like Jarvis, with people that are involved, like all of you all, it doesn't have to stay this way. It doesn't have to stay.
Thank you very much.
And whatever I can do, if I can step in an area where I'm needed, I hope somebody will give me a call and say, hey, we need you over here.
Thank you.
Because my husband's been out there forever and a day, and it's time for me to get out there as well. I know I still have a little girl, but I do have some time that I can.
Thank you. Thank you. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more speakers. We'll try to go 10 minutes, and we'll move from internalizing despair to externalizing hope and action for change.
I think I'm going to echo some of the comments that were said already, but I'm going to echo it from not only law enforcement side of it, but as a Black man and also a policymaker. Education is key. And I don't mean just in school, I mean in how the system works. Every police department is a private entity. So every police department has their own individual use of force policy. So if we're not engaged with our local council members and local elected leaders, it's hard to accomplish missions because every use of force policy is unique to that city. Now, where legislation becomes important is when we have legislation passing through Congress or being introduced, such as HR 4408, which was brought forward by Representative Jeffries, prohibiting chokeholds by police officers. That's nationwide, so that's going to blanket every police department. We need legislation that's going to blanket every police department because every police department is private. Every sheriff's department is private to that county. So that's an important part of it. The other important part I want to push to the point is be active and engage with your local elected leaders and police chiefs because they're the ones who make decisions. Culture starts at the top. I mean, you could go to any law book or any use of force policy, and just because something's on paper that says it's right, doesn't make it right. And if you're not engaged with them, we can't get policies changed. We have access to use of force policies with every police department. Ask your police chief for a copy, email him, and see what needs to be changed and addressed because some of those policies, I dare to say, go back to maybe the 50s and 60s, where it was okay to be openly racist and biased against folks of color. So we have to be engaged in also that aspect. Now, when it comes to incidents, such as what we just seen recently, we need to have independent review boards that consist of community leaders, not just law enforcement. For instance, we do have internal affairs, right? That investigate these incidents. Department, right? So human nature, these folks work together. We work together with each other. We work together with the district attorney's office. So we need to have independent review boards where there's community leaders and folks from the community who have a voice and action on that. And before I finish, something that was brought up by Miss Dixie, and I'm glad she brought it up, for instance, saying that there's a concern with body cameras in the city of Palm Springs. You know what? I'm the perfect person to talk to. I have a great relationship with Chief Reyes. I can address that with them. I'm on the Public Safety Committee with Coachella Valley Association of Governments. And that's how we have to work. It has to be dialogue so we can move forward. So we could prevent any of these further incidents that are happening. I could go on, but in the interest of time,
I was going to say, Councilman, we would have passed it to.
Hey, Jarvis, I'm bigger than you, man. You all right?
So, Pastor Croon, how do we move from internalizing despair to externalizing hope and action for change?
To be honest, you know, like I said, I'm like everyone else. I'm gonna echo kind of like what you guys say. You know, policy is a must, change is a must, and then just to encourage. You know, sometimes our youth are discouraged by what they see, and they feel like that they feel like they will never see change, so they won't become a part of the change because they feel like there's what is the use of me getting involved because it's just going to remain the same way. So we need to give them some optimism, And that comes from those of us who are preachers and councilmen and things like that, say, hey, you know what? You guys have to carry on the next generation. So we're not going to be on the scene forever. So let's start preparing them to take over the next generation, you know, and encouraging them to get involved. And then secondly, and I'll say this a little different. I mean, it may be a little different than what everyone has said, but we also have to encourage, if there's a disparage, or if there's an issue between the police and the community, then on the police side, we have to become involved in policy. But on the other side, we have to also tell our young people, listen, don't do anything that will cause any extra burden that's already being levied that's being levied against us. And so I think it has to be on both sides. Okay, if you're doing something, hey, you know, don't do it. If you're doing something that can cause something, don't do it. But at the same time, we need to also work on the law enforcement side as well. So I think there needs to be a balance, working between both the police. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Pastor Croon. I think that that was very important to be said. Master Sergeant Edward Bracken, how do we move from internalizing despair to externalizing hope and inaction for change?
I think pretty much everybody's already said it, but instead of just getting mad, get involved. They've already talked about a number of ways you can contact the local, state, and just get involved. One thing we don't want to do with this incidents and all other things, the extracurricular activity, it takes the eye off the focus of what really the protest is about. And what you don't want to do is allow them an opportunity to dismiss everything that you're trying to obtain, everything you're trying to change, by letting that become the idea, as opposed to being what you're trying to change. So I echo everything everybody else has said. Thank you for having me involved in this process. I deal with kids in a different way in the school setting, but we do talk about things like this whenever we can. So thank you.
Thank you. Debbie Franklin, and then we'll close with Reverend Carter, and we'll have a quick prayer close circle with Pastor Shepard again. So Debbie Franklin.
Okay, one of the things I'd like to see and what we need to promote is more people active in city council meetings and commission meetings, parks and recs. These are all open meetings. These are meetings you can just go, listen. Because one of the things that I found out in the 6 years that before I got to the council, you go to the meeting. Just the fact that you're at the meeting, you can be sitting and writing a note to the person next to you, makes the people that are sitting at the dais pay attention. Why are you there? What do you want? And when you start going to the meetings, you become involved. You listen to the reasons why decisions are made. So you're not coming after the fact. The decision's been made, now you don't like it. You've had a chance to voice your opinion anywhere along the way. And it gives you some sense of acknowledgement. When they see you at a meeting over and over again, people are not willingly separating themselves. I'd say that for the majority of the people, they're not willingly separating themselves from the public, but they do, by the nature of their jobs, get very isolated. And if they don't see you, you don't exist. And if you just start with just going to the meetings, you don't have to say a word. You just go to the meetings and have somebody, if it's too much for you to go to every meeting, you rotate and you have different people go to the meetings and then share their notes. Because it's great to have a separate meeting for this particular incident, but this is going to get old. A month from now, it won't have the same impact for some that it has now. But, you know, when I think of the person who stopped and spread eagled on the ground with his children watching, for the person, oh, I'm done.
Well, you can finish that sentence.
Oh, for anybody who has encountered the prejudices or the social profiling, that's where you need to start. When you say, I'm going to call the chief. Then they listen.
Okay. Thank you. Reverend Carter. Reverend Carter, how do you move from internalizing despair to externalizing hope in action for change?
Thank you again. And, you know, I had alluded to it when I had my opening comments, you know, for as the people are asking for change, asking for something to be done, you know, and I'm just a problem solver. I just would say as a suggestion for the actual issue here is police brutality. And so for Furman and for Dixie talks about about the body cams, because that came under the Obama administration. It went far, but we need to go further in it. For like in football, every touchdown is under review. I believe every arrest of a black man or a Latino need to be under review. For have the body cam on it, and if the officer don't have the body cam, and then that arrest is void. And I think some action like that needs to take place at the root of this particular problem, not pushing a social agenda, education, all that's important. But the specific problem is that for the body cams need to be a part, and we need to go further. And for as every arrest, in order to be a valid arrest, needs to be under review, and not just from eternal. For it needs to be some kind of for people that we vote in the office, some council, you know, in that particular, because of the human nature. Because human nature is not going to invoke justice. It's going to always, you know, for whatever bias a person may have. But at least at this can't. It won't stop the murders, but it will bring justice, because this video camera, for the videotaping of this particular for incidents, it didn't stop the murder, but it will bring justice. And that's the whole purpose of the body cam, for us to bring ultimately to bring justice for us in a situation that is perhaps unjust. And so that's radical, but I think something radical needs to be done. For every black man, every Latino man needs to be, for every arrest needs to be under review. But to the Bible, bless you, have a good day. I got a study to go to.
Reverend Carter, let's take our petitions to the great judge now, to the judge of justice, with our prayer, the one who throughout the ages have shown which side he's on, and he's always on the side of justice. So let's, if we can close with a prayer, Pastor Shepherd, we'll go full circle here with you. After this prayer, we'll end this this gathering, this listening session.
Congressman, this is Troy again. I have one question. Will we have additional dialogue and interactions to really address these issues, or is this the,
yes,
you know, and maybe with Jarvis or whomever, will he be reaching out again?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this won't be the last event we have. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Before I pray, I just want to know, I don't know if y'all got the notifications, but they just charged the other 3 officers, and the first officer's charge was moved from 3rd degree to 2nd degree within this last hour. So
yeah, I saw that.
Amen.
Yeah,
amen. I saw that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's pray. Father, we just thank you. We lay these petitions at your feet right now, oh God. You are the God of justice. And so we cast all these anxieties on you, as the word says. And Lord, in exchange, you said that once we do this and we start to think of things that can bring hope and praise, that you'll give us peace that passes all understanding. So God, we speak peace amongst this group. We speak peace through our respective communities and families. We speak peace through this nation right now, oh God. Lord, you're on the throne. Your ways are above our ways, your thoughts above our thoughts. And so, God, we no longer want to meddle in your business. We just want to be able to walk into peace and be the change that you called us to be. Lord, let us leave this call, let us leave these meetings being the salt and light that you explained that we should be to this world, because somebody needs to know that you're in control. And we give that to you right now, God. And so we just thank you in the matchless name of Jesus. Let something that we've said today become a light for someone else. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Thank you, everybody. I think there will be some of you who, Wayman, you got a last word to say. We got to close soon, my friend.
I just want to invite everyone to the Candlelight Vigil we're holding in Indio. I just got word from my committee that we're going to do it Tuesday, Please find me on social media. You can just plug my name into Instagram. It's Councilman Wayman Furman. And it's going to be a candlelight vigil headed by our faith-based community here in the Valley. So especially our churches are invited, and everyone is invited in our community. Thank you for letting me have that conversation.
Thank you, Wayman. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your words, for your work, for being a source of hope for so many, for your families. And thank you for speaking up. This was a wonderful session. It was a listening session, and the press was here. The press will ask some of you questions afterwards. I know the Desert Sun had a question that we didn't get to that we'll open it up for some of you, Wayman, Pastor Shepard, and we'll continue these conversations because many of you identified that dialogue and leads to better understanding. And that better understanding leads to empowerment, and that's how we can put hope in action and realize some change that we need for all of us. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yes. Hey, Congressman, can I ask a favor? I know you have emails for just about everyone here. Is there a possibility that someone from your office can email us and copy us all? And maybe this will be a good connection for us. Some of us don't have connections with each other, and this can be a way that we can stay connected.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.